Hello, everybody. This is Bruce Morgan with the Bruce Morgan Show. We've got another episode today in the Management Best Practices series. Now, today we're going to do something a little bit different. A few people asked me to do a video with my management take on the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni legal PR lawsuit battle that's currently going on in pop culture. Now, I'm not a big pop culture guy, but I looked at this case, and at first I thought it was kind of a little bit uninteresting. We'll get into the details, and I'll explain why. But first, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. I just did a video about my recent camping trip in my tech van, my RV, so go check that out if you want to. Also, next week, I'm going to have another management video related to retrospectives versus postmortems and what those are and why they're different. And if you're a channel member, you'll be able to access that video early. So you may want to think about supporting the channel, help me make these videos by signing up to do that. Now, what is all this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni stuff about? There's a nice People article here, People magazine. Oh boy, are we in the dentist office? I don't know, but we're reading the People magazine because that's what you do when you're sitting in the dentist office. But anyway, the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuits explained. So real quickly here, what happened was these people were making a movie over there in Hollywood, as they do. And once the movie was over, there sort of started this PR battle. And the PR battle escalated to lawsuits. So basically what happens here, we've got Blake Lively stars in the movie. Also, Justin Baldoni's like the director and stars in the movie as well. But on December 20th, she filed a complaint against him in California claiming sexual harassment and a retaliatory public smear campaign to destroy her reputation. Oh boy. Let's see. Now, then what happened next? So these things were happening. And then I believe there was where's the thing? The day after the filing, the investigation was reported in a New York Times story. This New York Times story is going to become important in the lawsuit. And then Baldoni, of course, filed his own lawsuit against the New York Times, alleging libel and saying they basically didn't do a good enough job reporting the story. And then he filed another lawsuit on January 16th, suing Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, our good friend over there doing Deadpool, and then their publicist, Leslie Sloan, and Sloan's PR firm, Vision PR, for $400 million. $400 million, guys. I can't even begin to wrap my head around $400 million. And the thing that kind of blows my mind here is I think he's suing them. Like, it's not like a corporation that is suing because a company was going to make a bunch of money and needed to pay, people that worked on the movie, like lighting people, sound people, the caterers, and whatnot. Like, I don't know why an individual human needs $400 million, but that's another soapbox. Maybe I'll get into it in a totally different video. But anyway, that's what's going on, guys. Now, here's the thing. I've watched a few videos where people have gone through these court documents, and what it seems to me is there was a lot of conflict during the making of this movie that seeded or escalated into where we are today with all this PR warfare, with all this lawsuit warfare, lawfare, whatever you want to call it. And if you want to understand sort of the PR side of it, you can go watch Dave Neal's videos where he walks through the court documents. If you want to understand the legal side of it, you can go watch Emily D. Baker or someone like that who's going to go through all the legal documents. What I want to do is look at this from a management perspective and say, what happened here that caused all this? And what could you do in the future looking forward with a forward-looking view in order to prevent these type of things from potentially happening? Now, you can't always prevent everything because hindsight's 2020, okay? But what could we do as managers, whether we're managing technical employees or non-technical employees in whatever industry we're working with? And let's go to, okay, so there's more stuff in here. And what I saw from some of this, they have a thing of the key players and all that, that'll become important. But what I saw was basically there were problems where Justin was going to go edit the movie, and Blake wanted to help edit the movie or do a separate edit of the movie. And so there was some disagreement about who's going to edit the movie, how's the movie going to be edited. There was some disagreement about who is going to write the dialogue and things for a pivotal scene. I guess they call it the rooftop scene. Who's going to do that? There were some conflict around how to handle sensitive filming of scenes that involved, intimacy and nudity and things like that. And there were disagreements about that and how that went down. So when I see this, what it does to me is it reminds me of parallels in other industries that aren't the movie industries in terms of management and putting into place good processes and structures for the employees ahead of time so that you don't get into these situations. And I'm going to give a few tips and tricks here related to that. Okay, so we saw these issues like who's going to edit this movie? So when I'm thinking about a project, and where I worked, our projects could take 3 to 5 years from beginning to end. And a lot of that time, we specifically put in a lot of front end time to something you might call pathfinding or project readiness before you actually execute the project. So before you do anything, get started on the project, in their case, start filming or building sets or whatever you're going to do that starts incurring money at a larger scale. You do a ton of planning and prep work, okay? So number one, there's this sort of management and project planning. And be sure that your project schedule has enough time for this. Okay, that's number one. Okay, and when you're doing that, as a manager, what you want to do for your team is you want to document clear R&Rs. Okay, so what are these? These are roles and responsibilities. Okay, so for example, if you are going to be in charge of saying, hey, we're setting up an LLC or we're starting up a project to do a movie, you should know from day one who is going to edit that movie. There should be no, the roles and responsibilities should be very clearly defined so that nobody is confused. Nobody thinks, hey, if I want to go edit part of this movie, I can go edit part of this movie. No, that should be clearly defined in these roles and responsibilities up front. It should say, for example, if you're writing software, is it my role and responsibility to write the software and then deliver it to team B? I'm in team A. I write the software, I deliver the final software to team B, and then team B uses the software. Or is it my role and responsibility to write the software and then also use it for specific tasks that we'll need to do in the project? So I'm the writer and the user. If you can't answer these questions before the project begins, you have a management problem. You have management failure. Okay, guys? And so you have to have these roles and responsibilities for all the teams, and the teams both internally within a team. If you have a 10-person team, all those 10 people, what are their roles and responsibilities individually? So for example, if person A works on market segment X and person B works on market segment Y, and they know that, then those two people can work together and collaborate effectively because they know they're not stepping on each other's toes during the whole project. But if you don't have that separation, those two people may feel some conflict. They may feel like I'm competing against this other person in my team. And this could go both internally within the team and externally. So you not only need roles and responsibilities defined internally within your team, you basically need inter and intra R&Rs, okay? And the same thing goes for R&Ds. Okay, what are these? These are receivables, and it's, I don't know, I before E or E before I don't know, whatever. And deliverables, I don't know if Notepad has a spell check, but who cares? Receivables and deliverables. So this is very similar to roles and responsibilities, but this, I would say as a manager, you should be documenting this and socializing this with your teams as two separate things. So if you're making a spreadsheet or a Word document or a PowerPoint deck, these could be different sections or different documents. Okay, receivables and deliverables are more about the physical things. So, for example, who is going to write the script? Okay, who is going to write dialogue? That is a deliverable. And then who do they give it to? Do they give it to an editor? Do they give it to an actor? Who is going to receive that? So, what you want to know as a manager, and again, this one can also be inter and intra. Okay. So within your direct team and outside your team with the teams you work with. Okay. What are the things your team needs to receive from other teams? When are you going to receive them? What's the timeline? What are the things your team is going to develop and give to another team or use? What are your deliverables? Okay. And what is the timeline for those? Okay. And this ties into the roles and responsibilities because in order to create a deliverable, you need to have the role and responsibility of developing that deliverable first. Okay. But they're a little bit orthogonal. And I think as a manager, it's a good idea to do both of these very explicitly. Okay. And if you do this, you can avoid some of these problems like, oh, well, I want to do an edit of my own of the movie, or I want to rewrite some dialogue up here. If it's not your job, your manager needs to understand what is and isn't your job. So the next thing is really that for a manager, what you also want is you want a clear charter definition for your team. Okay. And this could go all the way from a mission statement, like we want to make the best widgets and sprockets in the world. That's kind of abstract, but maybe that's your mission. And then you move it down and you say, the way that my specific team is going to do that is we are going to write software and then deliver it to another team so that they can do this part of the thing that makes the widgets. Okay. So if you have a clear charter definition, I think the point of having a clear charter definition that wraps around the roles and responsibilities and receivables and deliverables is very important because not because it says what is your job, but because it says what is not your job. Because if your job is not editing the movie, then you shouldn't be involved in editing the movie at any point in time. Okay. Because then it's just a charter violation. Okay. And when these things happen, what you're going to do is you're going to use the charter definition, the roles and responsibilities, and the receivables and deliverables to be able to observe if any conflict or problems or team interactions are going off the rails and fixing it before it becomes a huge problem and suddenly you have PR people and lawsuits flying left and right and this and that. Your job as a manager is to make sure the project goes smoothly. Manage the project. Manage the people. Okay? So, in conjunction with a clear charter definition, we need a clear organization chart. And you can see from this people article over here, the big problem is they're like, who are all these people? Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. Key players, right? Who are the key players? And it's like, okay, you got the big stars of the movie. Ooh, the big egos. Okay, right? But then you've got all these other people. There's Ryan Reynolds over here, and you got producers, and you've got PR people, and you've got publicists and people writing articles for the New York Times, and then you've got celebrity name drops and everything. The fundamental problem with this is that this is not an org chart for the company or the LLC or whatever they do. Usually they do an LLC to protect a bigger company like Sony from too much liability exposure. But if Sony has this sort of child LLC that's going to go make this movie, right? You have to have at some point a clear organization chart that says who do people report to. So, for example, I was watching one of these videos going over the court documents, and someone said, well, they thought Blake reported to Justin, or Justin was Blake's boss. And I don't know if that's true or not, because they're both actors. Now, he's the director, so he has director responsibilities. But at some point, the people doing the work can't also be the managers, okay, or the supervisors. You have to have a clear organization chart that shows how you are going to escalate issues and resolve conflict with someone who can be a decision maker. Oh, Blake wants to do her own edit of this movie. no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. I'm your boss, and your job charter is this. Your roles and responsibilities are X, Y, and Z, not editing the movie. Or maybe, beforehand, you have roles and responsibilities designed where it's like, okay, we're going to have three different people make three different edits of the movie, and then a final executive is going to decide which cut is the final cut. Or maybe the director decides which of the three is the final cut. Uh, that all has to be very clearly explained before you begin in order for these problems not to arise and cause bigger and bigger issues over time. Because the bigger an organization is, the bigger these problems can escalate into. Okay. So you have to have a clear organization chart and a way for a manager to be able to stop employees from causing problems. So, for example, if somebody wants to rewrite a scene, and the manager's like, no, you can't do that because that's not part of the contract. That's not part of the roles and responsibilities. And if somebody goes around with a big ego, like these Hollywood stars, and just does whatever they want, there have to be able to be repercussions. Okay. Let's look at, the NFL is a good example. There's high profile football players that get paid a lot of money. Okay. They're celebrities effectively. And if they do something that they shouldn't be doing, then there are a clear escalation path and a clear organization chart for how you handle that. You might have a fine on that player for doing something they weren't supposed to do. They may be suspended for a game. They may be suspended for multiple games. They may be fired. Okay? These things can happen, and there's a clear escalation path. So let's say it's a quarterback. You have the quarterback coach who can be the manager of the quarterbacks. Then you have the head coach if you need to go further up. Then you have the owner or the general manager of the team. Then you have the NFL front office, and they can apply policy across all of the teams. So you have to have a clear organization chart, and the management hierarchy needs to be very explicit on who can enforce policy. Because I have a previous video where I talk about what's the difference between a policy and a recommendation. If you don't enforce policies, like if Blake Lively's not allowed to, rewrite a scene, or if Justin Baldoni's not allowed to, violate some policy around filming intimate scenes, okay, there needs to be somebody who can enforce the policy that was there from the start when something starts to go off the rails to keep it from escalating like this, okay? That's the key right there. And I don't see that in this case. I don't know what their org chart was. Maybe they had one. I don't know what their contracts were in terms of roles and responsibilities and receivables and deliverables. But to me, in my mind, when I hear the stories coming out of this movie, it just feels like clear management failure, okay? There should have been some sort of structure contractually and functionally in order to stop all this chaos from happening. And I've had people tell me, now, Bruce, Hollywood doesn't work like that. It's not like corporate America. And I agree. That's my point. It should be better. There are things you can learn from other domains to make your own domain better. And in this case, if Hollywood is sort of this crazy Wild West of big egos just going off and doing whatever they want and suing each other and causing all this chaos, $400 million, to me, that's a failure in management and project planning and handling a project, okay? So I think these are some of the things that we can take away and learn for future projects, whether it's making a movie or whether it's working in tech or whether it's whatever you do in your job. These are the things I would put in place, right? Clear contracts that have roles and responsibilities, receivables and deliverables, both inter and intra, clear charter definitions, clear org charts, and then who can enforce the policies and make decisions about things like, do you have a fee? Do you give someone a warning? Do you suspend an NFL player? Do you fire someone? Do you fire an actress and start over? Do you fire the producer and director and start over? There has to be an escalation path. Let me give you an example, because what's happening here with this is everybody feels like they're, the most important person in the room. I was in a situation once in my career where two managers were arguing over email that I was adjacent to or that impacted me about when something should happen in the project, a particular date. One manager wanted that date to be very early in time because they said, my project's important, so I want the date to be early for this event. The other manager said the exact opposite. They said, my project is very important, so I want the date to be later for this event. And I just looked at this email thread and I said, look, this is what I thought internally. Neither of these two managers, this is what I learned after some introspection, neither of these two managers is in charge of both projects. Only the person that is actually in charge of both projects or both arguments can make a decision on which project is more important than the other, prioritizing between two things. Each of those managers was merely prioritizing their own thing, okay? Internally, they weren't responsible for the other thing. So effectively, all they were doing was pushing their weight around or so, they're trying to convince the other person, which at best is arguing, but at worst, it's bullying and intimidation, especially if those managers are different, pay grade levels or something. It could be seen as bullying and intimidation. So the key thing is make the decision at the right level, okay? At the right level. And what you want is you want your roles and responsibilities and receivables and deliverables set up so that you can push decision-making down as far as possible in this organization chart. Because think about it, if you have a company with 50,000 employees and the CEO has to make every decision to break ties, your company is never going to work properly. You have to be able to have first-level managers, individual contributors, team leads, second-level managers make decisions and break ties. But in order for them to do that, they have to know what is their job to make a decision on. Is it my job to make a decision on whether that date for those two managers should have been earlier or later for that event? You have to know these things before you begin, because otherwise you'll find yourself in the middle of a terrible email chain that you can't get out of, and it causes a lot of chaos. Or you'll be in this situation like this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni case, where everything just escalated and got worse and worse and worse. To me, it's not about who's right. It's not about I'm Team Blake or I'm Team Justin. That's completely irrelevant. I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury on any of these court cases. I'm not writing newspaper articles about this story. I don't work in a PR firm. But what I can do is look at all of this and sort of do a retrospective and say, what could we do in our domains, in the things we have control over, in order to do the next project better than the current project? And these are the things that come to my mind as a manager. And I know to some extent, okay, I did a lot of management work. And when you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? So I'm applying the management toolbox to this problem. But I mean, I think it's valid, and a couple people asked me to do it. So here we are. Once again, okay, spend enough time up front doing management and project planning. This could be contractual. This could be contracts that you literally write out. But they could be informal. It could be a Word document, PowerPoint, Excel. You need your roles and responsibilities inside and outside the team. You need receivables and deliverables documented inside and outside the team. Your team should have a clear charter definition, not so you know what your job is. Everybody gets hired to do a job, so they know what their job is basically once they've been ramped up. The more important thing is, what is not my job, okay? Because if I am, when I was a janitor, my job was to go around and clean the individual trash buckets into the big rolling dumpster and take it to the trash bay, okay, as a janitor. My job was not to go polish the elevators. That was somebody else's job. So if I had just said, I feel like I want to go polish the elevators, that's a charter violation. That's somebody else's job. I need to focus on my job, not someone else's job. And then you have to have a clear organization chart so you know who is everybody's manager. And, you can effectively resolve conflict with a single point of conflict, with a single point of contact who is responsible for both sides of the problem, or making a decision that takes everything into account within the charter definition scope. Okay. So simply saying my project feels pretty important, I'm going to bully this guy over here working on another project in the company. That's not right. Okay. And then make the decision at the right level. Okay. So the only person who can say whether project A is more important than project B is somebody who's responsible for both. The only person who can say who should edit part of the movie or the whole movie is the person who is originally responsible for that. And if you don't know who is responsible for that, that is a management failure. And it needs to be better the next time around. Okay, I know this was not your typical management video, but here we are. If you've stuck around this long, thanks so much for your time. I'm Bruce from Oregon. This has been the Bruce from Oregon Show. Talk to you later.